Otherwise, oh, were we not recording today?
I think probably someone else joined with
Oh,
a note taker
okay.
or something.
Awesome. Yeah. If we do this, then now the transaction is actually going to continue and I can go do dupes. Now, this might also be kind of annoying. So I'll do the dumb thing and I'll just say like TXNs equals, yeah, get TXNs without dupes. I'll just pass in the old TXNs and the new TXNs, pass to the model, give it context that these are coming from some new pages that might have overlaps from the previous page, and then get out a new full array from the model. And now we have our
Cool.
answer. And this is only if I actually continued from a previous page. Otherwise, I wouldn't do it. Otherwise, I would just append everything all there on its own. And now I'd have built a pipeline that is pretty good at extracting all this data. Before I get into it, any questions from people as we're doing this? Does this kind of make sense? Like the process that we went through of all the way originally trying the PDF raw didn't work. Figuring out how to go do that. Well, we're going to apply some filters and only find pages with actual transactions for every single subsequent step. Then we're going to go ahead and solve the biggest problem, which is headers and footers, get rid of that. And then we're going to solve the next big problem, which is data breaking, having page breaks, and continuing that down with a similar problem where I just ask an LLM, do these pages have continued data or breakpoints? If the LLM says yes, I continue. I do some special stuff like merge the image into a new image or paste both images in. I'll pause for questions.
Yeah, I mean, this approach makes sense. I'm trying to restrain like the receptive field of an LLM, basically.
Yeah.
Um, I'm just wondering if like there are pretty good OCR models that do bounding box detection. So would it make sense to restrain the field even more just by using a bounding box of the line item instead of trying to like do this page magic?
You can try that. In general, what I have seen with bounding box models is that they're generally worse than LLMs at a lot of things. Um, so like it's the same as like using an OCR model instead of an LLM. On average, you're probably right. It might work, but like what I have seen in practice is that the LLM just does a much better job. I think LLMs can do more than you think, but they just need a little bit more stability to help with them. So like if we get rid of all the transaction data, I think that like you're definitely right. You will get that transaction pulled out. But I have found very, very few bounding box algorithms that'll actually detect like every single bounding box on this correctly. Because the semantic meaning of a bounding box here is very different. The semantic meaning of a bounding box here is like this whole thing. Good luck getting a bounding box to give you that shape. That's just not going to work. What the bounding box algorithm will do is it'll give you this one, and it'll give you this, maybe, if we're lucky. And then I'll give you this. And then I'll give you this. And now you're still stuck in a world of pain of connecting all this stuff together. And that is a really, 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 really hard problem. This is why I think the math approach didn't really work. And why like training models end to end would ended up being the answer. Because the math approach would connect all these together. Can you do this? Yes. It will just take more time, more tuning, and more correctness to go do this.
And it will work on a less diverse set of
Exactly.
data and inputs.
The reason that I shared the header technique is not because I think that's one of the best techniques, but because there's a level of standardization that I know is true in headers. It's like almost definitively true in headers.
And so why not give yourself the extra 1% by just forcing the model to ignore everything there, basically?
Exactly. And this is only after finding out that like in the case of financial data, like headers are like a big problem. In the case of medical records, headers are a big problem. The model just gets like confused by a bunch of like numbers and stuff at the bottom. Is kind of what we found is like these numbers end up hurting the model's performance a lot more. Uh, Passing in a page like this hurts the model's performance a lot more. So like just like removing extra context from the model does help. That it doesn't need for sure. But I also don't want to accidentally be stuck in a world of pain where I have to go and find all these weird edge cases myself. I want to do the simplest thing that takes almost no code that I can go vibe code up that gives me that 1%. It's a time to ROI problem over everything else. Does that answer the question, Ajay?
Yeah, it does. Cool. No, that makes sense. Thanks.
Yeah, of course. Vijay, you got a question?
Yeah, I had a similar scenario previously when we were processing invoices.
Yeah.
This is pre-LLM days when we were all building RPA bots and automations and
Ah,
stuff. So we had different uh, invoices coming in from different vendors, and we were trying to build these automation pipelines. And as you can imagine, like a large enterprise has so many vendors, and each vendor might have their own format for invoice and headers and stuff, and
yep.
they have their own different sizes. So what we ended up doing is we again took the Pareto principle there. We took around 80% of the invoices which had like 5 or 6 formats and tried to
Yep.
automate that. Another 20% sort of either now you could say those are human in the loop, but those are processed manually. I think that approach might be applicable here as well, where let's imagine if you have a repo of 1 million records. Historically, you want to process your entire data bank. Then then I think you will have to adapt these pipelines using that approach as well. Correct?
Exactly. So what I would do if I were really building this pipeline out from like scratch on my own is I actually wouldn't build headers and footers out on every single process. What I would do is I would just save this per type of vendor that's coming in, do a quick extraction of like what vendor is this, like Chase, US Bank, or like the top 500 banks that exist, save PDFs together, and just like have that saved forever. And then literally every single week, pull 1% of my pipeline through this script to see if the header changes dramatically. And if it does, put a human in the loop in that process. And then once I put a human in the loop in that process, I will basically just go ahead and solve like validate the data that it's doing is not randomly a header and footer. Because it's financial data, I don't accidentally want to lose something critical. And that's kind of how I would solve this problem, like more long term. I do a hybrid of exactly what you were repeating, Vijay, which is like specialize for specific vendors and
Exactly.
as much as possible. And then the other 90% just get slightly worse quality, or other 10% get slightly worse quality.
Correct.
Everyone that's listening should 100% do that for as much of their pipelines as they can. It's like you drive really high quality for certain vendors that you know are well understood and like represent 80 to 90% of your data, and like sacrifice some lower quality on 10%. You have to understand that as a part of building your AI pipeline.
Where, sorry, if I can have a follow-up question,
Yeah.
where I have difficulty in extracting, since we are talking about multimodality, is extracting legal clauses. For example, I have a use case where I'm building, extracting contracts, like vendor contracts, vendor clauses. Those are so random and they're defined per use case, per vendor. One vendor can have 100 contracts which with different contexts. So it's so complex to extract these legal clauses that I mean writing evals for that is just a nightmare for me.
What I would recommend for a scenario like abstract scenarios like legal clauses where it's not even concrete what is a legal clause or not is I would honestly just go and take 50 documents and by hand pull out what you would want to pull out. And then see if you can semantically understand them. So I think a similar problem that we worked with a company on was around SEC violations. Like detect SEC violations from like emails. That's a really
This
ambiguous.
was our policy to prompts episode. That was like the
Exactly.
example we
Yeah.
did.
Right? It's a similar thing.
Enron.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, instead of trying to solve all of SEC in one prompt, because models can't do that today, maybe they can tomorrow, but not today. We'll pick one policy and we'll make it work on that. Then we'll pick another policy, make it work on that. It's exactly the same as the invoice problem, where you instead of specializing per vendor, we take the general thing of legal clause and we break it down to specialized clauses, and we get really high performance on those specialized clauses, and we slowly
Okay.
expand that out.
So you could manually do something. Let me, Vaibhav, I think this is building a little bit, but let me know if this sounds crazy. Is you could do something like take 50 to 100 like legal clauses that you know, turn them into kind of like almost like their own classification sets with really good descriptions. Have the LLM try to categorize into one of those 100. If it can't do it, it goes into the other category. It goes into your manual queue to go, oh, this is belongs in this category. We need to change the prompt for that category. Or this doesn't belong in any category. We need to make a new category. And like that, you can kind of build up where like even if the wording is slightly different, if semantically it fits into one of your 100 categories, then you have a solution. Does that sound accurate?
Dexter has basically become the ultimate shit to value translator. I say a lot of words, and Dexter says a lot of more better words, and it's much better than all the things I say. I'll take one more question, and then I think we're gonna hop out for today. Sadly, can't go the full 90 minutes, but if you post a question in Discord, we'll get to it by the end of the day. Andre.
Also, for the record, this show runs an hour, so every minute
Yes.
after 60 minutes, you're welcome. But thank you for bringing good questions. This has been super fun. Yeah, Andre, you want to take us out with the last one?
Yeah, really interesting techniques with cropping. So I'll tell you how I've done this with medical records. So I do the OCR and then just extract the text. And the OCR is pretty accurate for the text. And then I pass the language model both the text from the OCR and attach the PDF. And for medical records, that just seems to work. And it might work for bank statements too. But you would have to deduplicate things probably and check with your technique.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's yeah, this technique for OCR, we found the same thing for a lot of medical companies. They do OCR first. But what we found is actually every company that was doing that has now stopped doing that. They just pass the data directly to the model with no OCR in the middle. And it actually works better.
Nice.
So I would try that in the more newer models and see if you get better results and report back. We'd love to hear it and see if that works for you as well.
Thanks. Good stuff.
Cool. With that,